Hello and welcome to today's episode of Trending. As always, it's brought to you in association with Ickonic Coffee. If you head over to shop.ickonic.com, use the code TRENDING, you get 10% off. Good morning, Jamie.
Morning, mate. How you doing?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Pretty good, mate. Pretty good. Well, there's only one place to start, really, isn't there?
At the beginning.
Exactly, yeah. The theatre, shall we say, that was the White House meeting between Zelenskyy, Trump, Vance, and the FBI guy, I believe, was there as well. It's obviously what's been making the headlines. It's a very polarising event. As we were speaking about before we came on air, you've got the kind of MAGA lot that are thinking Trump dominated it. You've got the pro-Ukrainian, left-leaning lot that think Zelensky's come out of it the hero. And you've got people like us in the middle going, they're all just actors and it doesn't really matter. If anyone thinks that was completely unscripted and natural, then I suggest you're not really watching and I hadn't really been paying any attention to politics for a very, very long time. And the fact that all three of them on their bios have actor listed, Vance, Trump and Zelenskyy.
Well, all the world's a stage, isn't it, to be honest? It felt very much, and we were discussing this before, you know, like those reality TV shows. So you've got like, I think it was like, The Only Way is Essex was one here.
Made in Chelsea.
Made in Chelsea. And then in America, it's like the Real Housewives of Hollywood.
Everywhere, basically.
Everywhere. Where basically they're supposedly real people, but essentially they're just people that want to be famous.
Yep.
That then kind of, they have sort of to-dos and arguments and there's a lot of drama. But it's all scripted completely and it's very much, and action, right, have that argument again. It felt very much like watching one of them. Not that I watched them.
You seem to know a lot about them.
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah, no, it did. It felt exactly like that. It completely wasn't natural at all. And it started really with the ambush of the question about his suit, which for those of you that don't know, he's the guy that asked that question is a journalist, obviously, but he's also married to the Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. So he's definitely not complete outsider. He's an insider. She was, if you remember, one of the ones they were touting as a VP pick. He's also the same journalist that when Trump a few weeks ago had all the MAGA hats in the office and went, "Who wants one?" and chucked one around. He shouted, "I'll have one," caught it and put it on, you know. So again, he's not an outsider. So I would suggest that he was probably involved in that ambush because it kind of started pretty much from there. Because Zelensky's dress has been, you know, a topic of conversation quite a lot. You call him the action man in the action man suit.
Yeah, he is a little action man figurine. Why he has to wear that all the time, you know, and the thing is, someone will watch this and go, "Well, why do you care what he wears, mate?" Good question. I don't care what he wears. The point it's relevant is because he's wearing it to have a wartime persona.
Oh, it's a costume.
It's a costume. He's wearing it as a costume. When actually, you know, he's in the White House or he's in Sandringham Palace this week with King Charles. There's no reason to be wearing your little action man outfit. No,
there's not. It's a costume because he's playing a persona. He's playing a character, isn't he? He's the hero. He's the guy I'm in the military dress. I'm on the front line. No, you're not, mate. You're gallivanting around, sipping champagne right across the world, which we'll come to as well, how he seems to be benefiting from this financially. But the big one is the fallout of it, which we've then seen a couple of days later. We've seen this summit of the European leaders and pretty much every NATO country, with the exception of the US, led by Insincere Starmer, where they've said that all willing parties need to come together and support Ukraine, and they need the US to help, but you know, Europe basically needs to step up. Now, we spoke last week and previous weeks when this started to appear like there was a bit of a discontent between the US and Ukraine, was that this could really be used to justify the furthering of the agenda towards a European army, which has been spoke about not too long ago by people in NATO and in the European Union. It didn't get particularly great public feedback. However, now, all of a sudden, there's this argument that they can put forward of Europe is completely vulnerable. Without US support, Russia will come in and they'll pick off country after country after country, and one day they'll be at your front door. That's what's being mooted at the moment and being, you know, used to justify the furthering of a European army and furthering of a potential conflict. So for me, this whole thing is theatre. This argument's clearly theatre, but also this like pseudo outrage between leaders and between countries of, oh, they're doing this on their own, they're doing this and they don't spoke to us, when it's all completely scripted, because the justification for a European army was nothing 2-3 weeks ago. No. Now all of a sudden it's something that's widely discussed. And you made a really, really good point on, I think it was Wednesday's episode or Tuesday's episode, when you were talking about, you know, people in the same team, in a sports team, might not like each other, but they're working together to try and win the game. I can quite believe Trump and Zelenskyy on a personal level maybe don't get on. Absolutely can believe that. But it was quite obvious that Obama and Netanyahu didn't particularly get on in a personal level. But Obama still did everything Netanyahu wanted him to do.
And more.
Because that's his job, as far as they're concerned. So you can have this sort of ego. You've got two egos in a room. You're going to have conflict.
You suggested Trump, who posts videos of himself with a golden statue, has an ego.
No, not so. I can be tougher than any man's ever been before.
Oh, mate, it's so awkward to watch.
It is
I
cringe.
could be so tough.
It is cringe. It is so cringy.
It is because it is reality TV.
Oh, it is. Yeah, well, he literally is a reality TV.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And this is the thing, like you're alluding to there. In the end, they're working towards the same goal.
Yep.
So if you think about it, like, okay, so Trump and Starmer are supposedly polar opposites. We've been calling them frenemies for a while. Just look at the AI agenda alone; they're aligned. But in terms of Zelenskyy and Starmer's backing of Zelenskyy and the EU's backing of Zelenskyy, and then this apparent, not backing from the United States, like you said then, there was no support for the European army before. There was no support for the European army during the whole Brexit debacle, which was why people were saying that were pro-Brexit, like ourselves, that actually, we want to get out of the European Union because the European army is not a good thing. European army is a conspiracy theory. And then I think it was Nick Clegg, wasn't it? It was the head of the Liberal Democrats, very pro-EU, said it was a conspiracy theory. And then it all, lots more came out about this European army. It's not conspiracy theory, it's the plan. So then what you get with Trump, who apparently is on the other side, he's fighting the deep state, by him pulling out of NATO and not supporting Zelenskyy, then you isolate Europe to such a point where those people that were 10 minutes ago going, I don't want a European army, are going, we could do with the European army.
Yep, 100%. And also they've increased defence spending in this country and other countries at the expense of
foreign aid,
and at the expense of also, undoubtedly, the quality of life here for people in the UK, either in the way of more taxes, which is almost certainly coming.
They've already put the taxes up.
But that was before they increased the defence spending. So they're going to have to, because, Labour are fiscally responsible. They've got the fiscal rules they will not break, even though Reeves has broken them about 4 or 5 times already.
Yeah. Well, we'll come to her at the end of today's trending of another way that they're going to steal money off.
So where's that money coming from? It's going to come in either cuts to services that are already depleted in this country, or it's going to come in the way of more taxes. And it ain't going to be more taxes on the billionaires, is it? It's going to be more taxes on us.
Or, and probably in addition to more borrowing from the banksters.
Yeah, 100%. And interestingly, you've talked about Zelenskyy. We sort of talked about him and his, in a sense, what's he getting out of this? Because on the surface, what's he getting out of it? But when you look at his financial situation, which you've looked into, it's quite an interesting one. It again begs some questions.
I mean, you can ask these questions of any elected official. This is a question that doesn't seem to get asked as often as perhaps it should. Even just in the UK alone, you look at people that are MPs that have basically gone to university and studied, philosophy and politics with the sole purpose of becoming a politician. That's essentially the degree they're going to get to do that.
No life experience.
They've worked as an advisor for a think tank or here and there, just nondescript stuff. Which isn't real work. And then they've become an MP on, 50, 60, and then they've maybe got a position in the cabinet on £90,000 a year. And after 10 years of doing that, they're worth 25 million quid. Now, I'm not a mathematician.
Yeah, it doesn't add up.
But it doesn't add up.
Doesn't work.
Now, with Zelenskyy, this is interesting as well, because that there's an agenda at play when a button is pressed, and you could see it after October the 7th with all the AIPAC-controlled politicians in America, that their tweets were all pretty much a cut and paste job.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
I mean, they were word for word. Well, it's been exactly the same over the last couple of days with Zelenskyy. Everyone's come out, the Uni Party. So in the UK, you've had Labour, you've had the Tories, you've had Reform, which are apparently the opposition, all aligned on Zelenskyy basically being an absolute hero, a war hero. Now, we can go back all the way to 2014. I would advise you do, because this war didn't start 3 years ago.
No, it didn't.
But what I find interesting about Zelenskyy, right? So people have said for a while, he's worth £1 billion, he's worth this, he's worth that. And it's like, well, how is he worth that much money? Well, I saw an article in the Economic Times where they were saying, oh, he's not worth £1 billion. He's not worth £1 billion. This is what he's really worth, right? And, okay, fine. So it's very conservative in terms of what he's worth. Bear in mind, this is what's declared.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this isn't what's offshore somewhere or in a vault in Switzerland. It said that he's worth 20 million And like I said, that's a conservative estimate.
It's good work if you can get it, isn't it?
He's got 4 million in property, 2 million in bonds and shares, with a further 1 million in additional assets. And they're not specified what they are in this article. So I asked the question, how does a low-level stand-up comedian in the poorest country in Europe, and it was the poorest country in Europe long before 2022, long before he came into power in 2019, how does he amass this much wealth?
Probably not through being a stand-up comedian in the poorest country in Europe.
Well, he's not a stand-up comedian anymore, anyway. Well, I suppose it kind of is in a way. But that's a question worth asking. How do you amass that wealth?
Well,
because that's an enormous amount of money.
Yeah, well, as a president, let's say as president he's on 250 a year, 500,000 a year, even if you want to go, extreme. That still doesn't add up to those numbers.
It doesn't.
It doesn't even begin to add up to those numbers.
No, and his wife's worth money too, so you can throw that in there.
She was front page of Vogue, wasn't she?
Yeah. Well, that was a time where a lot of people actually woke up to the fact that this whole thing was nonsense. I look at it and I think, right, so what's the next play now? Obviously, they're looking to push for the EU army and stuff.
Yep.
It wouldn't shock me if there's a false flag incoming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They've been saying that Russia's going to, like you said a moment ago, after Ukraine, it'll be Poland. And then after Poland, they're going to go into here, they're going to go into there. It'll be the Czech, or Czechia, whatever it's called now. It's not called the Czech Republic anymore for some reason. Or it'll be Finland, or it'll be,
Yep.
There's no evidence for that other than trust me, bro. But basically, that's what they're saying. So it wouldn't shock me then if there was something to kind of try and almost point all NATO guns at Russia. See, look, we told you they wouldn't stop at Ukraine.
Well, every time that they want to do something and public opinion does not allow them to do it, or it's against them doing it, something happens.
Yeah.
Take away, look, for example, you can pick some really key catalyzing events through history. Take away Pearl Harbor, the US can't get involved in World War II. Take away the Gulf of Tonkin, the Vietnam War doesn't happen. Take away 9/11, the war in the Middle East that's still ongoing today doesn't happen. Take away October 7th, what's happening in Gaza right now doesn't happen. Yeah. Really simple. Really simple.
You can even throw in the Lusitania with World War I. You can go all
Yes.
the way back. There's certain catalysing things that happen where they go, look, we don't want to go in. We don't want to go. Oh, looks like we've got to go in. Oh,
yeah,
shucks.
There's like mini false flags and there's major false flags. And the major false flags, it's really key to point out, false flags doesn't mean it didn't happen. Doesn't mean people didn't die. People say that all the time. What it means is who they're telling you did it and why they did it is probably not who really did it.
Yeah.
Key, easy metric when you're looking at any event like this, who benefits from you believing whatever they're telling you is the official story. Exactly. That will usually give you a very good idea of who is behind the event. And then you have like smaller false flags. Like for years now, Russia in this country have been demonized, whether it's the ski poles, whether it's Litvinenko, whether it's a few other events, they've always been demonized, whether it's the interfering with the Russian election, whether it's the whole LGBT stuff around the 2018 World Cup, whether all those things, Russia has been demonized bit by bit, not always in major cases, but the doping, of course. Yeah, when every single country in the United States doesn't have a doping problem in athletics. Jeez. And there's just little teasers. And then you obviously have the major events, which they try and pin on them, like, MH17, the Nord Stream pipeline, all those things that they then, and obviously what we're seeing.
They later had to admit that it was definitely not the Russians, because that was such a ridiculous one.
Why would they blow up their own pipeline?
Exactly.
It was their leverage over Europe.
Yeah, didn't make any sense.
You've only got to look at it for 30 seconds. Mad.
Just before we move on to the next story, I'll ask you this, Jay, because it popped into my head. I have thoughts occasionally, ladies and gentlemen, where things will just pop into my head and I'll think, that's interesting. And I had it with Biden, where I thought, is Harris the choice, actually? This was probably about halfway through Biden's presidency. I was like, is Harris the choice, actually? Because you couldn't get Harris elected, as they showed, but you couldn't get Harris elected. She was so unliked. She was out of the primary straight away.
Yeah, she was, yeah.
Biden became president, definitely on a stolen election, and I've got no skin in the game with Trump, but it was blatantly stolen election. And then obviously his cognitive decline was laughable. And in the end, it didn't happen in the way I thought it potentially could, which is that he pulls out, she runs the country. But it kind of did in the way that at the end he pulled out of the race and she was the de facto president for a couple of months before obviously losing in the election to Donald Trump. I get a weird feeling about Vance in a similar way. I wonder if he's
quite possibly
significant.
Quite possibly. I mean, if Harris is the answer, I don't really know what the question is, pretty much.
No, that's true.
But with JD Vance, the thing that he's got, that Harris, if you compare him to Harris Harris is a complete buffoon. You've only got to watch her speak and fumble over her words for 30 seconds to realise she's not only not electable, she's also got about 3 brain cells.
Well, she just laughs.
Yeah, compare that to Vance. Now, like I say, I don't like this guy. I don't like anything about him. His connections are completely, he's owned, completely owned, right back through to his university days. You can follow the money on how he got to where he got. However, not a bad-looking bloke. He speaks quite well. He comes across quite eloquent and quite funny. And he seems to, in the eyes of the American public, have a backbone. He'll stand there as the odd one out at a European summit and tell them they're all wrong. He'll sit there in the White House and call out Starmer. He'll call out Zelenskyy. So in the eyes of the kind of John Wayne America tough guy, he ticks all those boxes. Yeah. So he's a hell of a lot more electable than she was. And you're right, Trump, in those meetings, particularly the Zelenskyy one, Trump just was like the guy in the middle, not really, occasionally putting his hand in. I have to say, because I'm losing a bit of, I have to make sure everyone knows I'm in charge. Whereas really, it was Vance that dominated that meeting. It was Vance that was, firstly, also when he made his points, they were quite concise points. Trump was just giving it Johnny Big Bollocks, basically.
He was giving it the big one, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that.
So it wouldn't shock me at all.
That Trump essentially sat down, throwing to someone else to hold court. Is happening all the time with Musk. And I remember the other day, like my wife was scrolling as you do in the evening, see what's going on, and was like, have you seen this? And it was X. It was Musk's son mouthing stuff to Trump. You're not the president, get out of that seat, and all this kind of stuff.
Jeez.
And it's like, people can watch that. If you search that, you better find that on social media. It's absolutely extraordinary. And there's certainly something going on.
Well, it's like
there.
you said in the office, mate. Did they need Trump to get him elected? To get them elected, sorry, and it's the people behind the scenes calling the shots. We know that in a way, but it's the people sort of one step back calling the shots. In the same way that you had, when you had Boy George Bush elected in 2000, really Dick Cheney was the president, really Rumsfeld and all those were calling the shots, and it's almost certainly the same situation here. But Vance is he doesn't have a lot of baggage with him, whereas Harris had a lot of baggage. She was heavily disliked in California for the way that she behaved when she was governor and, head of the judicial process over there, wasn't she? Whereas Vance has kind of got a blank canvas with a lot of people. Yeah. But look at his connections, ladies and gentlemen. Look at his connections into the AI world, into the technocrat world, and it will...
Peter Thiel's the big one.
Yeah, a few names pop up. Thiel's one of them. He seems to pop up everywhere.
Yeah, I'm brain farting. Ladies and gentlemen, it wouldn't shock me if Vance ends up being somewhat significant.
100%.
Okay, so moving on. Again, it's MAGA or rather MAHA or MAHA, because I think they're just laughing at you, if I'm honest. So this is a piece from Fox. This was an opinion piece that was penned by RFK Jr. Now, bearing in mind, RFK Jr. has been confirmed now, so in theory, he shouldn't have to play 5D chess anymore, should he? Because he's been confirmed. I sort of let it slide when he said a few things when he was trying to get confirmed that went against his more sort of, vaccine skeptic stance previously, because people were saying, well, he's got to say stuff to get himself confirmed. And I was like, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, let's see what happens when
he gets confirmed. So this is an opinion piece he's penned. So this isn't even just someone stuck a microphone in his face and gone, The headline is Measles Outbreak is a call to action for all of us. MMR vaccine is crucial to avoiding potentially deadly disease. Now, if you compare that to his stance previously, particularly not just on vaccines, but particularly on MMR, because bear in mind, this is the one that is overwhelmingly connected with autism and has been for a long time. Now, people might believe that or not, but there's lots of questions.
Even pro-vaccine people have questions about the MMR because you're giving 3 live vaccines, measles, mumps and rubella, all at the same time. And there's no need to do that. You can, if you're a pro-vaxxer and you believe in vaccines, you can have all 3 completely separately. Whereas this, you are giving 3 doses to an 18-month-old child.
It's mad.
And the key, having worked on a documentary on this and spoken to lots of mothers about this, the key day is day 10 after having it, which is when the measles part of the vaccine becomes live, and most of the injuries that you see and deaths are day 10, and it's as a result of that. Yeah. Which he has spoken about himself previously.
He has, yeah. And so that headline alone is a serious flip-flop. And it's certainly not what the Make America Healthy Again and the MAGA lot were, they're not getting what they paid for. Now, what I find crazy about this measles thing is they say outbreak, it's like 6 cases or something. But at the same time, like, we had measles parties in the 80s. That seems to be one of those things that's like, it's one of those sort of memory hole things where people go, oh, you know, is that a Mandela effect thing? No, that happened. I remember it vividly. And I saw lots of people talking about that over the last couple of days, actually, saying, well, what is going on with this obsession about this measles outbreak? We had measles parties. You had one kid in your class got measles, so everyone had a party together, you know, slobbering over stuff as little kids do. And everyone got measles, everyone went home, everyone got a bit poorly for a bit, and then that boosted your immune system, you were set for life, basically. Now, people can sit there at home and go, well, that's barbaric, that was wrong. No, that's a matter of opinion. I'm just telling you, that's what it was like in the 80s. Now we're at a time where it's an absolute crisis, and you've got someone like RFK Jr. pushing vaccines all of a sudden and pushing the MMR. It's extraordinary. What I've also seen as well, ladies and gentlemen, is people saying, oh, no. They would have just taken that headline. They would have just taken that out of context. They would have done this and they would have done that. There's always a potential with that with the media, because obviously it's got to go through an editor. But it is an opinion piece that he's penned himself. So it's not just like they've got a quote and then taken it. So I saw Maria Z of Z Media was being sort of poked with that kind of excuse. And so she's quoted this. This is a direct quote from that article. In response to the outbreak, the measles outbreak, I have directed the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, the ASPR, to work closely with the Texas health authorities to provide comprehensive support. HHS efforts include offering technical assistance, laboratory support, vaccines, and therapeutic medications as needed. All parents should consult with their healthcare providers to understand their options to get the MMR vaccine. This is what he's been railing against for the majority of probably the last decade at least. The decision to vaccinate is a personal one, I agree, although it's not personal for the 18-month-old that's got no choice. The decision to vaccinate is a personal one. Vaccines not only protect individual children from measles, but also contribute to community immunity, protecting those who are unable to be vaccinated due to medical reasons. Now, that is straight off of the script of Bill Gates, of Ted Ross, of all the rest of them. And so I asked the question, as I feel like I've asked the question since Trump was elected and started picking his Israel First administration. At what point do the MAGA lot or the Make America Healthy Again lot start to go, hang on a minute?
100%. Well, the thing is with RFK would have brought in a lot of people who weren't MAGA, to be fair. They'd have brought in a lot of the traditional Democrats that would have supported his uncle, would have supported, you know, that party of actually being more of a liberal party rather than a fascistic party. So he got them across. He got the kind of conspiracy questioning of government vote as well that didn't like Trump. So he probably was very, very influential in bringing that election across.
I believe he was.
And that's why he was obviously offered the position he was. And I don't understand how you can campaign your whole career. You have the Children's Health Defence. You work closely with people like Andy Wakefield, obviously, who was the poster guy of vaccines cause autism because of his 98 paper that got him struck off in the Lancet, where they call him a fraud, even though he never redacted the paper. He still stands by it. The Lancet call it a fraud because it said what they didn't want to say. And now you're going back against all of that. I don't get how all of those people who claim to be, you know, wanting to make the world healthy again now that have supported him, you know, you have people like MAHA and other, you know, health supposed leaders that have called out the fact that he's going to look at this, he's going to call a halt to the vaccines, he's going to put a formal investigation into whether they cause autism, and he's now, after 5 minutes, doing the exact opposite of that. Yep. And the thing is with the MMR and with vaccines in general is I always get very skeptical when I'm told what's not happening, but then no one tells me what is. So all you keep hearing is vaccines don't cause autism. There's no connection between the MMR vaccine or any other vaccine and autism. Yet autism has risen to the point that it's going to be 80% of the boys by 2030 and 1 in 2 children in general. So all I keep being told is that's not caused by vaccines. Okay, so what is it caused by then? Because you're providing no counter-narrative, providing no other explanation for it whatsoever. So a justification I hear sometimes is food. Right, well, a 15-month-old child isn't probably gobbling down a Big Mac, are they? So
you'd hope not.
You'd hope not, anyway. So, okay, if it's a generational thing and, adults have, terrible diet that's passed on to children, maybe there's a factor to be discussed there.
Yeah, but nothing's been done about that,
Nothing being done about that either,
Yeah.
no. And the whole, if you don't know it's vaccines, you don't know it's not vaccines, you're skeptical, you should be then completely open-minded about every possibility. In the same way you could apply that to the rises in various types of cancers that they're saying is definitely not because of EMF. Well, what is it then? Because there's no other explanation being provided. So for me, like you made a really good point, the young child, 18 months old, whatever, that isn't making that decision themselves, for me, your job as a parent is to make the best decisions for them until they're old enough to do it for themselves. You're a custodian, essentially, of them, and your job is to make the best decisions. If you went to your doctor, most people I'd hope, and they advise you a certain drug, a certain therapy, a certain operation or whatever, you'd probably go and take a look at that yourself. You'd hope. Even if for a very simple case that, well, I need to know if I can take the time off work, I need to know if I can get some support, or I need to know if I'm going to need some whatever to do that. So why don't you do the same with your child? And so many people, and this is why I do find it very difficult to look at the white coats and have any respect for any of them really, is you're in a position of authority, and basically you're looking at a very vulnerable child and a vulnerable parent who is looking to you for reassurance, looking to you for confirmation that what they're doing is the right thing. And to say they abuse that power is the biggest understatement possible. But the fact that, as you mentioned, the MAGA lot and the Make America Healthy Again lot believe they've got their man in charge, and it's going to be so different to when Fauci was in charge. And what's he doing? He's doing exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing.
It's not a great start. I mean, when it comes to health, someone spends more time looking at various details and bits and bobs with the car they're looking at buying than they do with what potentially life-changing drugs they're going to put in themselves and their kids. It's very strange. What I find just finally on this quite weird, Jay, is with the excuses that are being made, and there are a lot of them being made, in terms of, but he can't go full on. Because I heard it with Trump the first time. He couldn't change this and he couldn't change that because of well, what's the point then?
Yeah, exactly. What is the point?
What is the point of having your man in there if he can't do anything? I don't get it. Either he can go in there and he can make a change and make everyone's lives better, but he's not. Okay, well that's not good. Or he can get in there, but he can't do anything anyway. In which case, what's the point?
There is none. There is none in him. And even if
in any of them.
No, there's not. And again, this comes down to a really simple psychological state, which is that you are externalizing power and responsibility to others. Imagine turning around 10 years ago, 15 years ago, before Trump became the hero in the eyes of many, and went, I'll tell you who's going to sort this. One of the richest men in the world. We're going to give all our power to this billionaire, and he's going to sort it. You'd have laughed. All the conspiracy lot would have laughed and gone, mate, what, like Gates? Like people like that? You're just playing into their hands, mate. And because someone said a few things online, and because someone has got this big man persona, when he's the exact opposite of that, such a beater, you've given all their power away to them. And I think people don't want, one, they don't want to admit they're wrong, and two, they don't want to have to look in the mirror and go, it's on me then. It's on us. We've got to take care of this. We've not got a little orange-faced man to sort it for us. We're going to have to sort it ourselves.
Well, that's
and
why
people don't want to do that.
That's why people get so angry with us. And you hear it all the time, and Dad obviously spoke about it on this week's video cast. There's no solutions. You black-pilled. You're too negative. Okay, right. Well, you've outsourced your solutions to a billionaire for a start. And there are solutions. Solutions are everywhere. They're just, like my dad says, they're just not the ones you want. Because what you want, and I get it, what you want is for some guy to sort it for you. I understand that, because it would be a hell of a lot easier. It'd be a lot easier to win the lottery than it would be to graft and earn money. I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, it is a solution to call out the fact that you're being played. That is a solution. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to carry on getting led off a cliff. And this is just yet another example of the fact that what people say... I have no political allegiance, by the way. I don't think you do either, Jay. Left or right. Two cheeks of the same arse, mate. What people say on the campaign trail to get themselves into a position of power and what they do when they get there are never the same.
100%. 100%. There needs to be a contract for a start where if you don't do what you've been elected to do, you can be removed from office instantly.
Yeah.
That would be a massive way to change it.
But we used to know that.
Yeah.
We used to know that. And do you know what's really embarrassing is even if people wake up to what's gone on with MAGA and MAHA and all that kind of stuff. In 4 years, there'll be another election and people will go, let's elect another person that's going to save us. No one ever learns from it.
Exactly.
It's annoying.
I mean, key way of describing it. Let's say you're out for a run, right? And you take a wrong turn. Would you rather somebody told you a mile into the wrong turn, actually, mate, you need to turn around and go back, she's gone the wrong way? Or when you get to the edge of the cliff and you've gone 100 miles and all of a sudden it's done. You're out the race, you're finished, you've got nothing left. That's the point that we're making here. At the moment, people are being led off the garden path. They're being led to the point of fascism. All the things that have been talked about for years by the alternative media, the advancement of AI, the technological takeover, technocracy, World War III, cashless society, they are all being driverless cars, the end of travel, they are the cost of living, the increasing attacks on people's ability to live independently without the state.
Universal basic income,
they are
carbon
all
credits, all being
pushed. All those things are going exactly the direction the cult wants them to. So how do you think you're winning?
Exactly. There's a video of Dad shared on his videocast this week of Klaus Schwab pushing things and then Elon Musk pushing the same thing. Yeah. And they are aligned. Yeah. Yet one is a Bond villain and one is a hero.
100%.
But they're leading you to the same place. Anyway.
Right, we're going to so nearly said we're going to finish on Rachel Reeves then, but then, we're not. Right, we talked about this story a couple of weeks ago, which was that they said they weren't going to tax us more here in the UK, but instead, sneakily, they're going to come for your tax-free savings. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. So at the moment, as I explained, I think might have been last week, you have an ISA in this country, a tax-free savings account where you can save up to 20 grand a year, essentially. You don't pay any tax on the interest. Any savings you have in accounts that aren't ISAs, you pay tax on the interest because, God forbid, you actually earn anything on the money that you save. How dare you? It's outrageous, very selfish of you.
This is how people get on the property ladder, Jay.
Essentially,
overwhelmingly. With ISAs, that's how they save their deposit to buy their first home.
Essentially, yeah. And what they do, and it's also what a lot of people do, I do it for my kids, is you start a little ISA in the name of your children, and you can put money aside for them when they're 16, 18, 21, whatever. If you put a $5 a week away for 15, 20 years, it does add up eventually. So basically, they're cutting it from 20 to 4.
It's a hell of a cut.
Well, they're cutting it by 80%, essentially. And the reason they're doing that is twofold, apparently. Apparently, it's to boost growth. Which basically means they want you to spend that, say, 16, let's say you save 20 grand a year. They want you to spend that £16,000. They want you to spend that extra £1,200 a month because apparently that will help growth because it will go into businesses, it will go into shops, it will go into bars, it will go into restaurants, etc. But probably won't happen.
It doesn't make any sense because you're saving it for a reason. So all you're going to do is save it in a normal bank account and then pay tax on the interest.
Exactly. They know that. It's not going to boost any growth. But what it is going to do is it's going to stop people from having as much savings. And the reason they don't want you to have savings, because essentially savings are a choice. If you've got 20 grand in the bank, and let's say you earn 20 grand a year and you lose your job and you've got 20 grand in the bank, essentially on the surface, you have a year to find another job before you are in any trouble. You may have a year to go, you know what, sod it. I didn't like that job anyway. I'm going to follow my dreams. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to retrain as something else.
I'm going to write a novel.
I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. I'm going to have a go at this thing I wanted to do when I was a kid, but then life got in the way. Well, all of a sudden they're gone. Hence why, and also, a lot of people aren't in the luxury of having 20 grand of savings. I believe in this country, it's around 60% are 2 paychecks from the street. 2 paychecks of not having any money incoming. Because people have cars on finance, they have houses on finance, they have credit card debt. The average credit card debt in the UK is £5,000, I believe, which is unbelievable. People are literally getting in debt, not to go on the big holiday to Spain, not to drive the BMW. They're doing it, a lot of them, to just eat and sleep and roof themselves and look after their children. So, immediately the attacks on people's ability to live is really clear. But this is, again, it's one of those ones, Gaz, we talk about this all the time. When something happens where it makes absolutely no sense, it's not helping anyone, it's only hindering people. Because the people that are worth billions, they ain't got ISAs. They got offshore accounts, they got NSNIs, they got their money in Switzerland, they got their money in gold, they got their money in stocks and shares and bonds. The people that are saving 20 grand a year are, or trying to save 20 grand a year, or trying to save up 10 grand for a house deposit. That's everyday people. Yeah. And they're the people that are being hit as a result of this. Because essentially now, £16,000 a year, if you can save 20 grand, is taxed when yesterday it wasn't. And 10% of 16 grand is 1,600 quid. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
That's a massive amount of money.
Yeah. I'd pay for one dinner for Zelenskyy.
Well, yeah, it would.
Downing Street.
Bit of champagne. But again, this is just targeting. This is to me, this is a really, really, really old left-wing socialist type policy, which is, how dare you hoard? How dare you hoard your money? It's very selfish. You need to spend it. You need to get rid of it as quickly as it comes in so that it can go and benefit others. When it's not going to benefit others because, again, every time you spend something, so say that £1,200 a month, you spend rather than save. Well, you're paying VAT probably on what you're spending. The people that you're paying to whatever you're buying, they're paying income tax, they're paying national insurance, they're paying VAT. It's just tax again.
That's all it is. And the thing is to go, one further and to maybe go a little bit, people will think maybe extreme, but just looking at this and then looking at the reaction to it from younger people. Now, younger people are the adults of tomorrow, remember? So there is an important thing there. Well, it's rich people whinging again about paying their way, right? It was the same with the farmers. He's got a farm worth £2 million and he's whinging. Well, no, the land's worth that much to a property developer. The farm probably makes 25 grand a year profit and he works 12-hour, 14-hour days for it, right?
To feed you, by the way. So you've got this thing, and I'm seeing it more and more, where those that are just trying to... we're not talking about billionaires. They're heroes, apparently. Yeah.
Because the heroes of the right are billionaires like Musk, and the heroes of the left are billionaires like Soros and Gates. So
Gates is absolutely
both sides just love billionaires. But people that are trying to get on a bit, people that are trying to do a bit, people who've got skills, people that maybe own a business, people that own a farm, they're suddenly being seen as the enemy, right? They're, like you say, they're hoarding. And I saw with the inheritance tax that people were saying it's immoral that the government can take money off of people in inheritance tax. It is immoral. But I saw the counter argument, particularly from young people and people involved in university, including university professors, blue air lot, that actually the immorality in that is anyone hoarding money so they can pass it on to their kids. That's immoral. I'm reading it going, hang on a minute, let me just... Oh no, she did actually say that.
Yeah.
Then you look back to communist Russia and you look at what they did to what you would perceive to be the middle classes. So the people that own the farms, they took stuff off of people. They would throw people in jail if they tried to sort of hoard a little bit of grain for themselves, because everything had to be donated to the state because it's all about the greater good and all that kind of stuff. You end up with 6 million Ukrainians starving or whatever. And then you look at Zimbabwe, but they did exactly the same thing again. They took the farms away from people that had them for generations, skilled farmers, because that's what happens when you have something for generations, you pick up skills. They take it away, they put it into the hands of people that have never farmed a day in their life. Suddenly there's no food, people are starving, the economy's crashed, people are turning up literally with wheelbarrows full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. Carnage. You're seeing the same happening in South Africa. And it's that thing where people say it will never happen again in terms of, communist Russia, where you're talking about the deaths of millions and millions of people. But it is, because that kind of, that almost that hatred for people that are getting on a bit, and we're only talking a bit, is very, very dangerous.
Very.
I find it very, very dangerous. You can kind of see it, and it makes me think, why did we never learn about the Bolsheviks in school? We learned all about the Nazis, couldn't learn enough about the Nazis. They never taught us about communism and what it did. And maybe it's because they knew it was coming back. So with that uplifting bombshell ending, that's all for this episode of Trending. Thank you so much for watching. As I said at the top, head over to shop.ickonic.com and use the code TRENDING and try some of our new Ickonic coffee. See how you get on with it. That code will give you 10% off. Me and my brother will be back tomorrow. Have a great day.